Hey there, it's Simon Hurley. Thanks so much for stopping by for today's video. Today I'm going to be showing how to use my Shell Maker Stencil, which is new from the Simon Hurley Create line, and some of my inks to create really awesome blended and watercolored effects and really share the endless possibilities of this stencil. Alright, so today I'm going to be showing how to use the Shell Maker Stencil, and this is so much fun. You can create some really awesome, realistic looking shells in whatever colors you want. So I'm going to do two variations today, but there's endless possibilities of what you can do. So we're using the new Shell Maker Stencil from my Simon Hurley Create line of products, and this is in kind of the Maker line, so we had a flower maker in the past where you can create your own flowers, which is so much fun. So on the back of the package here you can see some of the examples of the shells that you can make, and I reference this packaging when I'm creating the shells so I can see exactly what I'm going to be making. So let's pull this out of its packaging. Okay. So when you pull it out, yours will actually come attached, and there's masks inside of here as well. So these just went into these openings here, and they're just attached with a little sticker. So all you have to do is just pull this off, and then you just peel off the little clear sticker, and you're ready to go. So we included those masks so you can do some fun watercolor techniques. And I'll show that later in the video as well, but these are so much fun, and you can use them in gel printing or anything like that as well, which is super cool. So let's start our ink blending with the stencil. So all I'm going to do is pull in a card base. This is made with the Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock, so it's super bright white and perfect weight for card bases. I'm going to put this down on the Make Art station, so it's going to hold my stencils down, and then we can start our ink blending. So I'm going to start off with this swirly shell right here. I'm going to put this down. Now you could do a little bit of masking if you wanted to with tape to make sure you don't go in the white areas here, but I'll show you a little tip that I have with blending. I'm a little bit lazy, but if you want to make sure that's taped off so you don't ink there, that's always a good idea. So first I'm going to start off by going in with a little bit of Over the Moon. I'm going to grab my ink blender here. I'm just going to go into my ink pad using the Simon Hurley Create inks, so these are going to blend super well onto here. And with these, I like to do a little bit of shading. I love the idea of stamp layering, but I created these stencils so that you can do kind of whatever amount of shading you want and that it's not just a solid stamp. So you can kind of create your own shading in here. So I just went around the edges with a little bit of the darker color. And then I'm going to move this a little bit, so I'll just easily lift up the magnets. I love that you don't have to tape it down. And then I'm just going to go right in line here, and there's this top layered image, and it's pretty easy. You can just kind of move it around a little bit, and then I'm going to lay it right down over the stencil. And then I also want to just share, if you look right at the packaging, you can see exactly how it's going to go, so you can see if you're missing anything or how to apply things down on the surface, which is really helpful. Then I'm going to go in with my second ink blending tool, and we're using the Gur ink pad, which is named after my dog. It's this nice brown color, and I'm just going to go in here and do a little bit of inking. Again, kind of creating my own shading there. You can kind of start from the center and work your way out to the edge. And you don't have to ink up the whole thing. You can leave a little bit left uninked, or you can kind of add some fun colors in there. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of this traffic cone color, and I can add a little bit of shading onto that brown as well. So just adding a little bit of color in the opposite direction, you can create some really fun colored shells. So then I'm going to lift off my magnets, and there we have kind of our shell building up a little bit, and then there's this last final piece, so we like to kind of put the pieces together here so you know to kind of just move around just a little bit, and then you'll be able to finish off the design. So I'll put down my magnets again. I'm going to go back in with the woof, and then I can go right in here and ink that out. Just add a little bit more ink. Perfect. We have our first shell done, and that was super simple and easy with this Shell Maker Stencil. And you can, again, do whatever colors you want and really create your own shells. So now let's move on to the second shell here. So I'm just going to lay this down. We're going to create a little sand dollar. So you can kind of find your position on the card where you want to put it. Once I've got it all figured out, I'm going to place down my stencil with the magnets to hold it down, and we're ready to start our inking. So let me start off with Clear Skies. I'm just going to ink up my tool And then again, I'm going to go, I like to leave a little bit of a white spot in the center, so I'm going to go in here and just add my blending down. I like to start from the edges and go in. And it doesn't need to be perfect because as you add the layers over top, it's going to kind of help everything work together and blend. I'm going to go in with the Remember Me, and I like these little detail blending tools as well. I don't use them to cover large spaces, but just to go in around the edges or to go into some of those smaller areas, it really helps that blending. So I'm just going to go in here, right into the edge, and just add a little bit of darker areas here and there, and it's just going to highlight some of those areas and divots in the stencil. Just really quick and simple. So then I can lift up the magnets, and then I'm going to move on to the second layer. So with this, I'm just going to lay it down, and again, check the packaging for reference. I just like to move these around. Some areas, sides are bigger than the other. So you can kind of find the area when each one touches the indent there. That's how you know it's nice and lined up. And we'll add our magnets on and we can do our blending here. So with this one, since it's that smaller space, I'll go in with Remember Me and that detail blending tool again. And this just helps get into those smaller spaces that maybe your regular blending tool wouldn't be able to. So just going into here, pressing the ink through. And there you have your shell, but we're not quite finished yet. If you want to add another detail and a little bit more color, you can bring in this last layer here, which adds little dots there, and it's so much fun. So I'm just going to take these magnets. I can go in with Slippery When Wet and our detail blending tool and just add a little bit more color there. And again, you can go in as detailed you want, or you can go in with fewer colors and just keep it super simple and flat with your ink blending. But it really adds lots of fun, color, and dimension when you're using one of these Maker stencils like this. So let's go in with the next shell. I'm going to put this one at a little bit of an angle here. I'll put the magnets down, and then we can, let me restart that. I'll put the magnets down, and then we can move into with Rosy Cheeks. So I'm going to go in here with my ink blending tool. Just going to, you can even tap off to the side too to make sure you get really nice and smooth blending. I'm just going to go in here and blend this down. With this one I'll go over with solid color here, and then I'm going to go back at the bottom and just add a little bit of shading from there, so you can make the top a little bit lighter than the bottom. And that's what's super fun about the Simon Hurley inks, is when you layer them up, they are translucent dye-based ink, so they layer over top of each other to create darker colors as you kind of keep blending and adding more color onto it. Then I'll go in with the next layer. This one has lines for its layer, and it's so much fun. I'm going to go in here, add that magnet down, and then I'm going to grab my tool and we can go in with a little bit of traffic cone. That orange color, and add that in there, so it's going to work nicely with the pink. And there we go. And then I can add another color at the bottom, this little fun detail down here. Just going to magnetize that. And then I can go in with Remember Me. And I'm going to go in with our detail blending tool again, just to add a little bit of ink down there. So you can see you can really have fun and play around with whatever colors you want. Now let's do the final shell here. I'm just going to add this on kind of an angle. Going to put the magnets down, and then I can go in with some Slippery When Wet. We're going to add a little bit of ink into here. And again, if it helps if you're on the edge of the stencil to tape off a little section or mask it off so you don't get any part of your card white, with any color, that's definitely a good thing to do. And I just kind of angle my blending tool if I feel like I'm going to get any color off the edge. And then I can go in with my next layer in color. Going to go into here with this little bottom piece. You can kind of move it around until it seems like it's going to fit there. Then I'll go in with Over the Moon, and we're just going to add a little bit of that color down there. This one's a little bit of a lighter color. It's going to work nicely with that top yellow. And then we have little pieces in this stencil that are have little lines on them and are going to fit right on top to add a little bit more detail. So again, you can keep it super simple and just do those solid areas, or you can go in with these lined areas a little bit as well. And it takes a little bit more time, but it adds so much fun detail and dimension to the shells. So I'm going in with the Gur color on a detail blending tool. And I'm just going to add a little bit of blending there and kind of fade that out a little bit. Then for the last layer, I'm going to go in with these two spots right here. And this just fits perfectly over top of those two sections right in between there. I'm going to lay that down. And then I'm going to grab a detail blending tool with the traffic cone ink to add a little bit of color in here. And again, you can kind of fade it out and have fun with how you add the color. Since you're not stamping it solid, you can kind of fade it into the other color and blend it really nicely on there. So I'll remove my magnets, and there we have all of our shells. So they look super fun on here. I love how they all turn out, and you can create so many different kinds of varieties of shells, whether you change out the color, change out the way you blend, or add different layers on top of each other. And now I'm going to share how to use those masks that we included in the set to create some really cool watercolor looks on the card, and it's really easy to do as well. So it's a little bit less time consuming than the blending, but it turns out super cool in the end. So we'll grab another sheet of the Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock, and I've cut this down into card-based size so we can create a fun card here. So I'm going to grab the mask, and you can use whichever one you want. You can add a little bit of ink down onto it. So I'm going to start off with some bee sting ink. I'm just going to tap a little bit of ink onto here, and you don't really need to do it in any certain way. It doesn't need to be clean on here because it's going to mix and blend together. And then I'll go in with a slippery and wet, which is that nice yellow color. We'll tap that in. Try not to overlap the colors on here. Again, they don't really need to look good on the mask because they're going to kind of mix and blend as we add water. Then I'll take the Distress Sprayer, and I'm just going to spray over top of that just a little bit to get that water and ink moving. And those Simon Hurley Create inks are water reactive, so they're going to do some really cool things when you spray them with that water. Then I'm going to take this, going to flip it over, and place it right down onto my card. There's a little bit of an ink spot on there, but that doesn't really matter. It's kind of a little bit of a mixed media card, so that's totally fine. You can cover that with a sequin a little bit later. We're going to let that sit on the card. I'm going to grab another shell here. I can add a little bit of Clear Skies ink to it, which is that nice blue color. And then I'll add a little bit of Overzealous. I usually like to add 2 colors to these, but you could totally keep it to however many colors you want. And then again, I'll spray it down a little bit to get that ink moving. And then you can add it right down onto the surface of the cardstock. So then I'm going to take the last Sand Dollar mask here. This is the 3rd one from the set. And I can take my Rosy Cheeks color. I'm just going to tap it right onto there. And then I'll take the Triple Berry color, which is that nice purple. I'm going to mix those 2 on here. Then I can spray this right down, and we can pick it up. It's a little bit tricky to do that off the craft sheet since it's wet. So I've lifted up my mask, and now we can place it right down onto the cardstock. We're just going to leave it there for a second. And the ink just takes a couple seconds to kind of seep into the cardstock. You want to give it a little time. And once it does, it'll start kind of lifting off. That's how you know it's ready to pull off your cardstock. And the masks come off almost completely clean. They don't stain at all. You can just clean them off with a little bit of water. And you get some really cool and fun watercolor effects on your cards, which I think is so much fun. It's a little bit easier. You could totally mass produce these cards since they're so simple to make, and it's tons of fun to just kind of create with your ink and get a little bit of a messier look. Now to finish off the card, I'm going to use this new stamp set called Mythical Mermaids. It's got a ton of fun mermaid illustrations in here. You could put the little bear and unicorn as a mermaid, which I think is just so much fun. I loved drawing this one. But in here, there's a sentiment that says, "Call me on my shell phone," which I think is so much fun, especially for this shell stencil. So I'm going to just peel this off the backer sheet. These are high quality photopolymer stamps, so they're going to stamp really nicely for you. And then I can grab the acrylic block. And to do this, to line this up, I just like to put it right on the craft sheet here. Kind of line up shell phone. We left it not attached, so you can put it kind of on the side like this. You can put it centered if you want to. I'm gonna put it off to the side just a little bit. And then we can pick it right up with our acrylic block and do our stamping. So I'm going to grab the archival ink here. This is a permanent waterproof ink. And I'm just going to ink this up. And then you can stamp it wherever you want on your card. Just place it down and stamp it. Give it some good pressure so the ink transfers. So I really love how that turned out with that sentiment on there. I think Call Me on My Shell Phone is so much fun for these little shells that we've created. So what I love about this stencil is you can either create this super stylized version with all the layers and ink blending and shading, or you can go in here with the masks and do some really cool things with watercolor. And once you're doing that watercolor, you can totally add the details on top to give it a little bit more of a detailed look as well. So there's so many fun, endless opportunities you can have with this Shell Maker stencil. You can really keep it clean and simple or go all out with the blending. And I just cannot wait to see what you guys create with the Shell Maker stencil when you get it in your hands. If you're interested in any of the products that we showed in today's video, be sure to shop the links down below. We'll have them all linked for you guys and you can check out all these fun new products.